Hey there, it's Lara here. Welcome to your weekly astrology forecast. This one's for the week of September 1st to 7th, 2021. Welcome. So I can't believe it's September. I don't know about you, but it seems in some ways, 2021 has felt like a lot of stopping and starting, so in that way it's kind of dragged on a little, but I don't know. I feel like it seems like it was just January 1st somehow. And here we are in the last quarter of the year. We are about to hit the back to school train here in a week's time. And so it really feels like we're moving into that fall season, even though fall doesn't officially start until the sun moves into the sign of Libra at the equinox, right? Which we'll talk about more when we get closer to that date. But this week, what we've got going on, well, as always, there are several things going on, but we have a new moon, a really interesting, potent new moon in Virgo. So last week's video, we talked a little bit about Virgo. And I gave you the heads up that in this week's video, we would be talking more about that as we be talking about the Virgo new moon and a lot of interesting things that are happening in alliance, I guess I would say, with that new moon. So I'm seeing this new moon when I was kind of, I sort of sit and think about, after I've kind of gone through the different aspects and taken a look and written some notes, I sort of sit with all of that for a bit and I try to come up with some kind of a phrase that, or a word or something that sort of encapsulates it, right? Sometimes it'll be like a movie or a song title or just a well-known phrase. Sometimes it's something that, I make up. But anyways, I feel like this new moon is a new moon of sort of everyday enchantment, of re-enchanting life somehow, of bringing a sense of enchantedness back into our mundane everyday lives. And I'll explain why that is as we go along. So some people may see it differently, but that's my take on it. So we're going to talk about that as we move through the video. I want to remind you that if you have not gotten on my mailing list yet, you can do that at astrologymaven.com, and you'll also get my free guide to working with the moon when you do that. I'm really, really hoping and planning that when kids go back to school next week, I will be able to kind of hit the ground running and, get a lot done. Best laid plans and all, but get a lot done as far as the website goes and launching that and launching my course. It's just been there's been a lot of stops and starts as far as that goes for various reasons over the course of the last 6 months or so. So I'm looking forward, very forward to this Virgo new moon personally, because I'm a Virgo rising, and so it's sort of one of those moons that's hitting me personally, and so I'm looking forward to the energy that brings and what I can do with that. And it coincides, like it's happening the day before the kids go back to school here, so that lends well for some fresh starts around here anyway, and for all of us. So speaking of the moon, we have the moon in the sign of Cancer today, September 1st. And, that is a Cancer moon is a time for nurturing, our loved ones, for being a bit of a homebody, for taking care of things around the home, for taking care of our emotional needs, for really making things comfy and cozy. It's a good moon for that. For connecting potentially with family, thinking about ancestors, that sort of thing. So the moon is there until Friday, and on Friday, the moon moves into Leo. So it's a long weekend here. So, moon in Leo is a good time for really celebrating potentially. You know, it's sort of like the last hurrah of summer in these parts, even though we still have some nice weather. But it's a time where it can be good to, you know, sort of get out there and be seen, if you will. Do something creative, spend time with kids, those sorts of things, right? And then on Sunday, the moon moves into Virgo. And we have that new moon on Monday. So, and then afterwards, the moon will move into Libra on Tuesday night. So, right before I talk about the new moon and what's going on in relation to that, I just want to revisit something. So we spoke about Mercury opposite Neptune, and I spoke about the fact, this was in last week's video, that as planets are moving through Virgo, they are opposing Neptune and Pisces, right? So Mercury had its turn, and next comes Mars, and that is happening this week. In fact, it's happening tomorrow, September 1st, and Friday, September 2nd. I'm talking about like Northern Hemisphere, Eastern time zone here is my time zone, right? So you can adjust accordingly. But in general, it's those couple of days when things are really potent as far as this aspect goes, regardless of where you live. So Mars opposite Neptune is, you know, if we think about the energy of Mars, our drive, our will, our sense of, you know, kind of go-getiveness. I think I just made that up, but you know, our passion, our desire, our exercising, our sometimes our force even, you know, and our assertiveness to get what we want. Mars is all about taking action. And Neptune is a very different energy. Neptune is this energy that's very hard to pin down. It's quite elusive. Neptune is associated with, you know, dreaminess and otherworldliness. It's the ethereal. It is sort of boundless, right? Or boundaryless. It is, when we have Neptune transits, it's like there is this foggy mist in the air, you know, and it's difficult to kind of see things clearly. So Neptune can, you know, like all the planets, they can have positive and negative sort of influences, right? And so Neptune is great for artistry and connecting with, you know, our sort of the unseen world, or our sense of spirituality, or merging, right, with the other people, with the sense of like oneness, you know, how we're all connected. It's, like I said, it's dreaminess and fantasy and imagination, which is all great until it tips the scale to being, you know, to unhealthy escapism. Neptune is often associated with addiction, because addiction is a way that we escape our everyday reality, right? So, or this Neptune can be associated with things like illusion, delusion, you know, things not appearing as they are, looking at the world through rose-colored glasses, and not really, you know, living in reality kind of thing. How we fool ourselves or can be fooled, or how we can be deceived or deceived others. This is all Neptunian energy, right? And so what's going on here, I kind of went off on a tangent there, but what's going on here is Mars opposing Neptune. So those two very different energies opposing each other in Virgo and Pisces, right? And so this can be, this can go a couple of different ways. It can be like the ability to act, Mars, on our dreams, Neptune, or manifest, so bring into reality our fantasies, in a sense, for good or bad, right? And for better or worse. It's like the physical, Mars, facing off, because it's in opposition, with the metaphysical, Neptune. And oppositions, excuse me, are tense because the two parties involved are, like I said, facing off. There's a need for coming to some kind of compromise. You're looking at the other entity head on, right? And so you have to come to some kind of an agreement. It takes some balance. So Neptune is like the dream that we're working towards. This is one way to look at it. And Mars is the action we take to get there. So if you think about that, right? If you've ever had a dream, and you decide you're going to take some action towards that, to making that dream a reality. Usually what ends up happening in these scenarios is a couple of different things. We can get so caught up in the fantasy that we end up way off course, or we end up, just dreaming and not doing. So the fantasy remains a fantasy, sort of thing. Or we actually realize the dream, but not necessarily in the way we had envisioned, or, we end up with something very different than we intended, but it still somehow fulfills the dream. So that's a Mars-Neptune dynamic. Mars-Neptune is like, it's kind of like, running through a fog, or walking through a foggy forest. Or another analogy that came to mind, it's like, Mars is sort of fiery. Neptune is this sort of, misty kind of energy. And so it's like spraying water, misting water on a fire, or, to tame it down, or on the barbecue, if you've ever done that before. So, we can use this in a productive way, but we can also, over these couple of days, we may feel a little bit like we're spinning our wheels and not getting anywhere. It can zap our energy a little. Neptune can take the fire out of Mars a little, which sometimes is not a bad thing, but sometimes it can feel frustrating. We can have a bit of a sense of spaciness, but it's okay to take a couple of days to just sit with things, and to not necessarily know exactly where things are headed. If you feel like you need to take a break, then honor that, definitely. I have a couple of things I want to read, but I think I'm going to wait a little bit until we're talking more about the new moon, which is where we're going right now. So this new moon in Virgo is at 14 degrees of the mutable earth sign of Virgo, right? So we're in that mutable energy right now, which is a transition between the seasons, right? And in the northern hemisphere here, we're transitioning from summer to fall. We're in that in-between place right now, between summer and fall. And so it's like, in the mutable seasons, like right now, for example, we can have very warm days and cool nights, or we can have a stretch of days that feel like we're in, the middle of like July or August, and then suddenly it feels like November. So we're in this time of transition, right? Where you can just start to see maybe some of the leaves changing color, and people are harvesting more of their gardens, and the fall plants are coming out. Like I just took my my summer plants off the front steps because they had basically had it. They had given their all and that was it. And so I've got, fall foliage out there now. So, which, some people might be like, don't, not so soon, but my summer plants on the front steps anyways had it. So I retired them. So that's this mutable energy that we're in, this time of kind of, shape shifting, if you will. And this Virgo new moon is the beginning of a new 2-week cycle, right? That's how the moon cycles work. So from new moon to full moon, and we're going to have a full moon in Pisces on September 20th. So this new moon will culminate then in some ways, in the short term kind of thing. What we begin now or whatever is initiated now in our lives comes to some kind of a culmination in a couple of weeks time, which we'll talk about when we get there. But in longer term, for longer range sort of planning and vision, this new moon in Virgo will culminate in the full moon in Virgo on March 18th, 2022. So in 6 months time. So this is kind of the initiation of a 6-month cycle in that area of the chart that contains Virgo, right? The new beginning in the Virgo area of the chart. So we all have Virgo somewhere in our chart, even if you're not a Virgo, sun, moon, or rising, or even if you have no planets in Virgo in your birth chart, you have Virgo energy in your chart because we all have the energy of all 12 houses in our charts, right? And all 12 zodiac signs. So you have Virgo in a specific house in your chart, and that house speaks to certain life themes. And so when we have planets transiting through there, or we have astrological events happening, even if we have no planets there, it's still instigating that energy. It's still triggering that energy, and we have an experience of that energy in our lives. And so there is a new beginning happening in the Virgo area of life, which will culminate in the short term in a couple weeks time at the Pisces full moon, but in longer range planning in 6 months at the Virgo full moon on March 18th, right? 2022. So the moon is exact at 8:51 p.m. Eastern time on September 6th, 2021. So again, you can adjust accordingly for your time zone. And there are a few interesting things going on in relation to this new moon. So as is always the case with a new moon, the sun and the moon come together. That's called a conjunction. They come together in the sky to conceive of something new, to ultimately birth something new, right? To start something new. The sun and the moon, those two luminaries come together. And it's the beginning of a new cycle. So at this time, the sun and the moon are meeting up at 14 degrees Virgo. Now, what's happening at the same time as this is over in Taurus, which is a fellow earth sign. Virgo's an earth sign. We've got Uranus there, Uranus retrograde in Taurus at the exact same degree as this new moon at 14 degrees Taurus. This means that the new moon, so the sun and the moon, are making what we call a trine aspect, an exact trine actually, to Uranus and Taurus. So this is really potent. A trine is an energy of upliftment, of harmony, right? It allows things to flow with some ease and some grace. So that's what's going on. And I'm going to talk about that piece a little bit more in a second here, but I just want to fill you in on the other pieces of the puzzle. At the same time as that's happening, the sun and the moon are also in a configuration with Chiron in Aries, which is called an inconjunct. So Chiron, I'm going to show you the chart in a second, but Chiron is at 11 degrees of Aries. So it's not as close of an aspect as Uranus and Taurus. That's the biggie. That trine to Uranus is the biggie. But this is worth mentioning. The sun and the moon are inconjunct, Chiron and Aries. And inconjunct, sometimes called a quincunx, is it's a 150-degree aspect. It's this aspect of irritation. It's a conversation where the two parties involved don't really have anything in common. And so they have a hard time coming together. They have a hard time seeing eye to eye. It requires adjustment. And Chiron is the planet that's associated with healing, most notably with healing. And Chiron, just to refresh your memory, in the mythology, Chiron was the centaur, and he was a teacher, and he was a healer, and he was immortal. And he was able, but what ended up happening is he was wounded by a poison arrow, and he could not heal his own wound. So he lived in perpetual woundedness, a state of perpetual woundedness, and sort of pain. And he was still had the capacity to heal others, though. And he had that, it gave him, I guess, a real sense of, as I see it anyways, of empathy and compassion, because when people or other centaurs came to him for help, he was able to, in some ways, kind of relate, right? And so this is Chiron in our natal charts. Chiron in our natal charts show our sense of sort of our deepest kind of wounding that we carry around with us, right? Our whole lives. And it's oftentimes it's like the monkey we can't get off our back sort of thing, but it allows us to relate to others that have had similar experiences, in some way. And so, but it can, we can feel isolated and sort of on the fringe a little bit, because we feel sometimes, our Chiron wounding can give us this sense of like, nobody gets it. Nobody understands. Nobody, I'm the only one experiencing this. It can feel a bit isolating. Again, I'm going off on a tangent. I don't know if that's the Neptune fog hitting already, but anyway, and Neptune has been transiting my 7th house over my sun. And it's a little ways past my sun in Pisces right now, but it's still there. It takes a long time to move through a sign. And so, there has been a few years of fogginess, let's just say. So anyway, I digress. My point here is that Chiron in Aries, transiting Aries right now, it's about halfway through its transit, close to it anyways, is collectively for us, it's about healing our sense of identity. Chiron in Aries is about healing our sense of identity. Who am I? Who am I in relation to others? Who am I in the world? Do I have the right to exist even, right? Kind of thing. And so with this in conjunct to Chiron and Aries, there can be this sense of like there's something about this new moon that involves some kind of healing, right? There's something being triggered here. So, but it won't necessarily be comfortable. There's likely to be necessary adjustments and compromises, and even potentially like checking of our blind spots or uncovering some blind spots along the way. It can even feel somewhat irritating, the process, because Chiron, because this in conjunct is an aspect of irritation. But ultimately, healing is never a comfortable process. And so look at it that way. And again, this isn't the biggest aspect involved in the new moon, but it's definitely worth a mention. I thought it was definitely worth a mention. So what else do I have to tell you about the new moon? And I'm going to put all this in perspective when I show you the chart here in a second. Oh yeah, something else that's going on at the same time as this new moon. We've got Mars in Virgo, right? And I just spoke to you about Mars opposing Neptune. So that's happening Thursday, Friday, before the new moon. But at the same time as the new moon is happening, we have Mars in Virgo in a trine again. So a trine again, a supportive aspect, right? An aspect that is harmonious. Mars in Virgo is trining Pluto in Capricorn, the other earth sign. So there's a lot going on in the earth signs right now on a very practical level. The earth signs are practical. They have to do with the material world and our daily lives and activities, you know, our earthly kind of realm. And so at this time of year, in, you know, the Northern Hemisphere at least, we are moving into that time when there's a lot of, you know, taking care of business that happens, right? So it's appropriate. So with Virgo, with Mars and Virgo trining Pluto in Capricorn, it's kind of like when Mars and Pluto are involved, this is big energy. It's like a power surge, or like a burst of almost like atomic energy is a phrase that came to mind. But because it's a trine, it's likely to be more productive rather than destructive, right? Like if this was Mars and Pluto in a square, or even in a conjunction potentially, I wouldn't be saying this. It would be more likely that the energy would be less easy to contend with, right? It would be a more difficult power surge, if you will, a power surge where, you know, the breaker blows and, you know, whatever, you have to replace your electrical panel or something like that. But this is more like giving us a real boost of energy, a real hit of energy. And that's something that we could probably use after Mars opposes Neptune, right? So it's like this, it's like getting this new moon like off the ground. It's like giving us a real boost of like, okay, let's get this party started, so to speak. So that's what's going on with Mars and Pluto. And then we have Mercury, who is the ruler of this new moon, because the new moon is in Virgo. Mercury rules Virgo. So we look to see where is the ruler, right, of Virgo. Well, the ruler of Virgo is right now in Libra. And I actually wrote a post about Mercury in Libra on Facebook yesterday. So if you're interested in sort of knowing a little bit more about that, you can go check that out. I'll leave the link to my Facebook page below, and you can read about that there. But Mercury in Libra is in a trine, another trine. So we have this another positive aspect, right, to Saturn in Aquarius. So also Mercury is opposing Chiron in Aries, and so there's that hit of like, oh, there's Chiron, right? Like this is some healing happening here that may be a little bit touchy, but there's all this support in the form of all these trines. And so we've got you know, Mercury and Saturn working productively and supportively together. Mercury, the planet of communications and you know, our sort of thoughts and ideas and that sort of thing. The planet that is associated in many ways with like our daily activities, right? Mercury's very busy and can multitask and those sorts of things. So, and that's in support, a supportive conversation with Saturn in Aquarius. Saturn there in Aquarius, who is really making us do the hard work of building something sustainable in the Aquarius area of life, and really sometimes, you know, throwing some obstacles in our way and making us not, you know, not allowing us to take shortcuts and this kind of thing. But we've got these two planets working in supportive conversation with each other at the time of this new moon as well. So there's a lot going on, you know, in relation to this new moon. And there's a lot, like I said, of support here in the form of trines. Trines are trines are an aspect that are of the nature of Jupiter, right? Expansive, uplifting, optimistic, benefic. So you can think of it that way. And the most potent aspect, as I said, is this trine to Uranus. So I'm going to show you the chart now before I say anything further. Here's the chart. And we've got the new moon here. So the sun and the moon down there in Virgo at 14 degrees, right? Both at 14 degrees. And you can see Mars at 24 degrees of Virgo as well. And there's Mercury at 10 degrees of Libra. And so we've got, here's Uranus over here at 14 degrees Taurus, right? Trining, you can see the blue line with the triangle, trining the new moon. And then you can see the line as well, the red line across to Chiron in Aries at 11 degrees, that opposition. And then we've got Saturn up here at 7 degrees Aquarius, right? In a trine to Mercury in Libra. And we have Pluto here at 24 of Capricorn in this trine to Mars in Virgo, right? And there's Neptune in Pisces opposite Mars as well, a few degrees apart. But so you can see all those things happening on the chart. Okay, so the most potent aspect is the trine to Uranus. It's exact, 14 degrees. I don't know if it's exact, almost exact to the minute, actually. So this is significant, right? The new moon has the support of Uranus. What's Uranus? Uranus is the unpredictable. Uranus is the bringer of change and insight, and Uranus is the innovator, the rabble rouser, right? Uranus is the disruptor and the liberator and the innovator and the shit disturber. Uranus, I was listening to the astrology podcast with Chris Brennan, and they were talking about the astrology of September. And he had a guest on there, Rick Levine, who's an astrologer who's been around for ages. I've taken some classes with him, and he's a really cool guy with a lot of knowledge. And so, and then of course there's Austin Coppock as well, who is a co-host of the astrology podcast, along with Kelly Surtees, who's been away for a while. But anyway, my point is that they were talking about, at one point they were talking about Uranus, and Rick Levine was talking, you know, he said something to the effect that Uranus resolves the irresolvable tension. So it's like when all the possibilities sort of have been exhausted, right, in terms of solving a particular tension, Uranus, and people are like, this can't be solved, this will never change, this is the way it is, you know, that kind of thing. And we see this on a global scale, but also we see this in our own lives, right? Uranus comes in and goes, oh yeah? Here we go. Changed it. I resolved the irresolvable. That's what Uranus does. And so I thought that was a really good description, and I wanted to share it with you. And so again, in this sense, Uranus' involvement in this new moon is helpful, right? So Uranus is resolving the irresolvable, but in a way that perhaps is less destructive, right? Still a change, still shaking things up, because that's what Uranus does, but maybe in a more kind of helpful way. And, you know, of course, we've got that ongoing square between Uranus and Taurus and Saturn and Aquarius, which we know is the backdrop of 2021. But right now, those two planets are a little further apart from each other. So we're getting a bit of a, touch wood, a bit of a break from that energy right now, but it's still the background, huh? So there's that trine to Uranus, and then of course, like I said, there's some trickier aspects, right? That to Chiron, those inconjuncts, suggesting that whatever happens at the time of this new moon is triggering some kind of healing. And as we know, healing is usually there's an element of discomfort there or irritation, right? So we can expect that. I was telling you that Mercury is the ruler of this new moon, and it's now in Libra. And it's in Libra for a while because it's going to retrograde there at the end of the month on September 27th, which of course we'll talk about when the time comes. The good news is that, you know, with Mercury spending such a long time in Libra and retrograding there, there is a lot of tweaking and adjusting and fine-tuning and making things work better and more efficiently, which is what Virgo's all about. That's Virgo's specialty. And so, you know, in a sense, even though Mercury has no particular dignity or debility in Libra, it is with the retrograde there, right? It's kind of like giving us a chance to really go over things with a fine-tooth comb, and Virgo likes that. So then we have Mercury also has the support of Venus because it is in Venus's sign of Libra, and Venus is also in Libra right now, right? So is at home in Libra. So it's like Venus is hosting Libra, and Venus is a really nice host and very comfortable in its own place. And Venus is hosting Mercury is what I meant to say. So that's going on. And the other thing I didn't even mention is that actually Venus is also in a trine at the time of this new moon to Jupiter. I forgot to show you that. I forgot to mention it. So there's Venus. Where's Venus? Right there in Libra, trining Jupiter in Aquarius, right? So two air signs, exactly at 24 and 25 degrees respectively. This is another conversation of support at the time of this new moon. And Mercury is also in trine with Saturn, which I don't think I mentioned that either. I can't remember if I did or not, but it's kind of like indicating, you know, that the hard work, that's the Saturn piece, the mental focus and diligence and our sort of mature, balanced communications, right? Saturn, Mercury will pay off in the long run and really have a positive impact somehow on the future, on our future and the future of the group, right? Aquarius. So a lot of trines amidst a little, you know, some inconjuncts there that are a bit irritating, but all in all, a lot of quite supportive energy going on. We've got Venus squaring Pluto as well, but like maybe we'll talk about that separately because I've given you so much, and I really do want to focus on the trines mostly. So I was saying to you earlier that when I was sitting with all of this phrase everyday enchantment came to mind, and the reason for that is because Virgo is really related to the things we do on the day-to-day. Virgo is the taking care of business. It's the sacred service. It's the devotion to daily tasks that are meaningful, that like it makes meaning in our lives, right? It's the preparation of the daily meal. It is the like it's the tiny things that we do on the day-to-day. The laundry, like, oh my God, tell me, like laundry, you have no idea how much laundry happens in this house. I am not kidding. Anyway, it's crazy, but you know, it's all these things that we take care of. It's our daily work. It's the things that we have to do you know, in our daily lives to keep the wheels turning, to keep ourselves healthy and well, to bring a sense of, like, again, meaning and purpose to daily life, right? Taking care of those details. And so this is, you know, sort of where this sense of everyday enchantment comes from. Uranus is this energy of of doing things differently and innovating. And, you know, I talked about some of the things that Uranus is associated with. It can be a bit futuristic in some ways, a bit sort of like magical, even, but not in a Neptunian way, right? But we have the involvement of Neptune here too, that we talked about, opposite Mars. And so I think that after 18 months of pandemic and our lives being really turned upside down, and you know, we've had to adjust and we've had to reevaluate what we do on the day to day. I just posted this article on my personal Facebook page talking about the mass resignation that's going on in North America. You know, this article focused on the States and talking about why that is. And a large part of it is that people are just reevaluating, you know, what does it all mean? And what's the purpose of all this? And is this how I want to spend my days? And, you know, this kind of thing. So maybe I'll put the link to that article below so you can check it out yourself if you're interested. And so, you know, I guess one positive thing that's come about as far as the pandemic goes is it's really forced us to look at things differently. And this seems like a good time to read, like, it's a really short little couple of sentences here from a book, Kitchen Table Wisdom, by Rachel Naomi Remen, who's a doctor and a writer. And anyways, I happened to just open this, right? Sometimes I do that. I've talked about this before. It's kind of like, it's what you call bibliomancy, right? We just open a book and read what's there. And oftentimes it is a message that you needed to hear, or it clarifies something, or what have you. That is bringing enchantment into everyday life. That's an example, right? So what I'm doing here is an example of exactly what I'm talking about. So this particular piece is called The Long Way Home, and it's a collection of stories. You know, that the subtitle is Stories That Heal. Some of them are difficult to read because, you know, it's about people that are palliative and different things like that. But, you know, it is really this sense of bringing enchantment into everyday life. But the thing I wanted to read here is, she says at the beginning of this piece called The Long Way Home, oftentimes of crisis are times of discovery, periods when we cannot maintain our old ways of doing things and enter into a steep learning curve. Sometimes it takes crisis to initiate growth. And I thought, wow, that is like exactly what I'm talking about here. That is this new moon. You know, Uranus can disrupt, and disruption, even if it's a welcome disruption, can feel like crisis, right? And we've certainly been living in a time of crisis. So, you know, and many of us have started to realize, like, we can't keep going the way we're going. We can't keep doing what we're doing, right? We can't keep living like we've been living. Something's got to give. And I propose that bringing a sense of sort of enchantment into our daily lives and our daily routines can help us to really navigate these, you know, crises that we're in, and reconnect with what's meaningful and purposeful. You know, that's reconnect with the natural world, that sort of thing. And somebody who writes a lot about this, like, this is not my you know, original idea here, but somebody who writes a lot about this is Sharon Blackie, who I absolutely love. And she wrote a book called The Enchanted Life, actually, and the subtitle is Reclaiming the Magic and Wisdom of the Natural World. And I don't have that book in my possession currently, but I'm going to read an excerpt for you that's off her website. And this explains better than I can what what I'm talking about here. Like, what does it mean to live an enchanted life, right? So this is what Sharon Blackie, wise woman, says. Ultimately, to live an enchanted life is to pick up the pieces of our bruised and battered psyches and to offer them the nourishment they long for. It is to be challenged, to be awakened, to be gripped and shaken to the core by the extraordinary, which lies at the heart of the ordinary. Above all, to live an enchanted life is to fall in love with the world all over again. This is an act of choice, a leap of faith, which is necessary not just for our own sakes, but for the sake of the wide, wild earth, in whose being and becoming we are so profoundly and beautifully entangled. So that's what I'm talking about. And that speaks to so many pieces of the astrology, right? This new moon in Virgo, that connection to the earth signs, which are about the natural world and everyday life. It even speaks to the Saturn-Uranus square when we talk about, the fact that she mentions here, not just for our own sake, but the sake of the wild, wild earth, right? We've got Saturn in Aquarius, the sign of the collective. And so it's not just about us. The decisions and the choices that we make on the day-to-day, as much as we like to think that what we do has no impact on others or on the world around us, it does. It does. Everything we do has a ripple effect. And so, we'd be wise to remember that right now. And it's certainly something I need reminding of, so I'm not just saying like that's for you, not for me. It's definitely for me. I never say anything to you that I don't need to hear myself. So I wanted to read that to you. And I think that's a good place to end before I take it through the signs and this idea of enchanting the everyday and looking for those opportunities, in your daily life, bringing a sense of meaning and purpose and, enchantment. Like one of the things, I'm just going to say one more thing before I take it through the signs here. One of the things that, like one of the examples I can give you from my own life is, well, maybe two examples. One, and I've talked, if you've been around here before, if you know me at all, like I love food, right? I love cooking. I love all things food. I love shopping for food. I'd way rather shop for food than clothes any day. It's what grounds me. It's what connects me to the natural world. It's something that connects me to a sense of meaning and purpose. It enchants my everyday life, right? And if there's been long periods of time when things have been too busy to kind of get in the kitchen for any length of time, or to sit down to a good meal for even just like a few days stretch, I get a little miserable. Because in our house, we generally do, sit down to dinner together more often than not, like most of the time. My husband's schedule has been really wonky because he's working with some folks overseas on very different time zones. And so he's had meetings and things all hours of night and day. And it's been a little crazy. And it's been a hard adjustment when, we haven't had that regular routine of sitting down to a meal together. And so we're still trying to make it happen as frequently as possible, right? So there's that is something. And I think when I, for example, when I'm in the kitchen cooking, it's like a moving meditation for me, right? And sometimes I think about, like, it really connects you to your senses, for one thing. And like, where does the food come from? And like how this is nourishing you and nourishing the people that you care about and that kind of thing. And then another quick example I'll give you is, when I spend time at the lake, we have this little sort of patch of land that juts out onto the water, and I just, it is like, what some people would, I guess, consider church to them. And I have such a connection to nature there, and I sit there and I just, you know, I'm constantly connecting with different creatures, and I talk to them. This summer we had a duck who was our pet duck at camp. Every time we went to the lake, she would come, and we named her Peaches, actually, and she would just come and she'd be around us, and sometimes she'd come right up on the land, like feet away from us, and just be, you know, cleaning herself and checking us out. Or we'd be out in the water. We have this like table that we put out in the water. We call it the swim up bar. And you know, we'll go stand out there and hang out there, and she will come out and like just circle around the table and come up to us and hang out and stuff, you know. Anyway, all kinds of birds and all kinds of really magical encounters that I have every time I'm sitting there. And this little patch of land is covered in all of these different plants, right? And I always think to myself, there is so much food and medicine right here in this little plant. Like, this is, nature is giving this to us, right? And we just look at it like it's weeds, or it's, you know, like it's, so thinking about things in that way it brings a sense of enchantment to our everyday lives. And that has the impact of of prompting us or encouraging us to treat life with more reverence, to be more appreciative, right? Of our, you know, of what we have on the day to day, and maybe then clue us into the fact that not everybody has that. And then, so what kinds of choices am I going to make so that, you know, we all have what we need, not just me and my family, kind of thing, right? So anyways, I feel like I'm on a bit of a soapbox here today, which happens sometimes, but I'm gonna leave it there and start to take you through the 12 signs now. So give you your horoscope. And I just want to say that if you have placements around 14 degrees of the mutable signs, which are Virgo, Pisces, Gemini, and Sagittarius, then this will be felt quite personally, this new moon. And, you know, it will be either a conjunction, an opposition, or a square, right? So that is energy that makes us kind of take notice. And then if you have placements around 14 degrees of Capricorn or Taurus, this is hitting those placements by trine. So you've got that added boost of a trine to whatever you've got going on in Capricorn and or Taurus at around 14 degrees in your birth chart. And if you have placements at around 14 degrees, when I say around, I'm talking like give or take, you know, 3, maybe even 5 degrees on either side. But so 14 degrees-ish of Cancer or Scorpio, those two signs are in what we call a sextile to Virgo, right? So 60 degrees. And that is another supportive conversation that happens. So it's like a conversation of sort of opportunity, and it can present us with opportunity. And so if you have placements at 14-ish Cancer Scorpio, those placements are getting hit by this new moon via sextile, right? Which is more support for you there. So I wanted to mention that to you. Of course, if you know your chart, then listen, when I'm doing these horoscopes, listen to your rising sign first and foremost. In a general forecast such as this, that will be the most accurate and obvious, because we know based on rising sign which house the new moon is falling in, so we can speak to those specific life themes, right? Whereas if you're listening for your sun sign, which is still relevant, it's like taking the sun and putting it in the first house, even though it may not be in the first house in your actual birth chart, which I wouldn't know unless I saw your birth chart, right? So listen for your rising sign first and foremost, but also listen for your sun sign, because it can still be relevant, and your moon sign as well. If you know your moon sign, can also give you some more nuance to work with, kind of thing. So we're going to take it through the signs, and I'm going to touch on the new moon. And I'm also just going to, so I'm going to tell you what house is being impacted, where this fresh start is on offer for you, what life themes, right, are being triggered, and you are being encouraged to plant new seeds of intention in relation to those themes. And, you know, where you may consider bringing, you know, a sense of everyday enchantment into your life, right? And then this, I'll also just touch on where Uranus and Taurus is sitting, because that's, again, like the major aspect by trine here. So where you can expect maybe some support, and maybe even some unexpected support, because Uranus is often the unexpected. Uranus can make things